This is the Nightshade Cult, a podcast macabre.
We bid you welcome. Enter freely and of your own will.
I'm Nick
and
Graham.
I'm David Graves.
We will be your horror hosts for this dissection of Elias Merhige's 2000 Gothic Horror, Shadow of the Vampire.
Good evening. It's almost a parody Gothic horror.
So Lisa and I sort of went around about this. My memory of this movie was that it was a black comedy. Rewatching it, although parts are hilarious, Willem
Dafoe is really the funniest thing.
Is like... Oh, he's so good. It is 100% a horror movie with funny bits.
Exactly, yeah. So I saw this in the theater when it was new, because
we probably saw it.
Yeah, probably. I love Nosferatu stuff. I love John Malkovich. I'm kind of a sucker for his movies.
Yeah.
And I remember it being kind of funny, and now I totally agree. Upon this rewatch, it's really a horror movie with a little bit of black comedy.
Yeah. This movie 2000's a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's 24 years ago. This was probably the start of my love affair with Willem Dafoe.
Okay.
Boondock Saints came out the year before this, so that might have been it.
Yeah.
But I didn't see that in the theater. That's something I caught later on
Yeah,
video.
I didn't see that in the theater either, but I definitely like that movie.
And so I feel like there was Boondock Saints, then this, and then Spider-Man, and then at some point I bought a DVD of The Last Temptation of Christ, and I was like, this guy can do anything. He's Jesus, he's Nosferatu, he's the Green Goblin, he's like, the range is incredible.
Yeah, I like Willem Dafoe as well. He's just a super character actor. He just gets into it and kind of dissolves into the character.
Whatever it is, and he doesn't seem to treat like anything as being below him. Like whatever it is, he takes it 100%.
I mean, he played Green Goblin seriously.
Yeah. I mean, he killed it as Green Goblin. He's iconic in that role.
Yeah, it's something about that. He has kind of a exaggerated facial features, like big lips, big nose, big eyes. He's just
like, he could be the Joker without any makeup at all, or not with makeup,
just stylized,
like clown makeup on his face, but you wouldn't have to do anything.
Yeah, to prosthetics not needed.
Yeah, his maniacal smile is already jokery.
Yeah, so this movie was interestingly not extremely successful. It was made for $8 million, which in 2000 is nothing, especially given the cast. And then it only got 11.2 at the box office, so it barely paid for itself. So it's considered a flop.
Yeah, you need to kind of double your budget to be successful.
Yeah, but it did nab Willem Dafoe Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor.
Yeah,
he did not win
nominated for the
yes,
makeup
for
also.
Makeup and hairstyling. No wins, but two Oscar nominations. Pretty good.
I think the movie, and it is a cult classic. I don't think it's ever really kind of become like an upper echelon film. Like, it's still below a lot of people's radar, I think.
After our last episode, I Googled just looking for websites. There's all these movie websites that do ranks and lists.
Yeah, like listicles.
Best Dracula movies of all time, best whatever. And this is always on it. It's usually near the bottom, but it's always on it. Like best, like in top 10s, it's on them, and top 25s, it's near the top. Yeah. But this is a well-regarded movie by people who care about Dracula movies.
Yeah, and it's none of these people, like on the technical side, have very long IMDb's. These people, Marriage didn't do a ton of films.
Yeah, I wonder how that works out. Like you make a big movie, it doesn't make you a ton of money, and then you just get no more work.
There's something called director jail. When a movie loses a ton of money, a lot of times it's very hard to find work. This because Nick Cage was a producer on it.
Yeah,
I don't think this doesn't seem like a movie that a studio lost any money on. So it's not the sort of thing that should put you in director jail.
No, I mean, I really liked it. I thought it was really fun. This is like The Disaster Artist.
And you like?
I
that
love that
movie
movie.
too.
That movie's hilarious. James Franco is great.
Another goblin.
Yeah,
he's Willem Dafoe's son.
That's true. Yeah. So, I mean, if you haven't seen The Disaster Artist, Cultists, that's a sort of a take on the making of The Room, a cult classic movie, which you should see. But yeah, this is fun. I love meta stuff. I was watching interviews with like John Malkovich, and he was talking about this movie, and he said that he of course is fascinated by filmmaking, obvious, but he said he will automatically say yes if a movie or a play or whatever is about filmmaking. He'll just pretty much be in because he loves the meta concept of it.
And this is very much like about filmmaking.
Yes.
And with the director as sort of the lead star. I won't say the hero, but the protagonist.
Yeah, he's the main character. He's definitely the protagonist here because it's all through his Murnau. It's through Murnau's lens. He's kind of the one that put it all together and all of that. And I think that you definitely have to be a bit of a Nosferatu nerd to really appreciate this movie.
So when I first saw it, like we said, probably we saw it in the theater together. I had not.
I had no idea either.
But it was seeing this movie that led to me buying on VHS, buying my first copy of the original Nosferatu and watching it. And now having watched it recently and watching this, they recreate those segments from the movie so faithfully.
Absolutely, like it's so good how they do those, and it's just like I'm going to probably say this throughout, just like The Disaster Artist. It's like frame for frame in some places.
And the body language, not just Willem Dafoe, but Eddie Izzard also.
Yeah, Eddie Izzard. I had forgotten that they were in this movie, and it's a fantastic performance.
They so like captured the sort of the exuberant body language of the character Hutter.
Yeah, Hutter is like, he's like over the top happy guy in the beginning of the movie, and Izzard's performance is just excellent. I'm really glad that like surprise happened. I was like,
I had forgotten that they were in this movie too, and just excellent cast, love letter to a brilliant movie, and just I've always considered this one of my favorite vampire films.
Yeah,
and it's still way up there.
This is one of those ones that it's sneaky because it would be easy to write it off because it's a vampire movie about the making of a vampire movie. So it's a little bit of a silly idea. Anything that's like an homage or sort of like a cover song, I'm almost never on board. But sometimes, just like with cover songs, they just fucking nail it, and you're like, yes.
And we'll get more into it, but it is also in a weird way. It's not just about the making of Nosferatu. It is a reinterpretation of the story.
It's its own vampire movie.
It hits the main story beats of Nosferatu.
Yes.
Fascinating film. Well, why don't we roll the music and then we'll get into this next. An eccentric German filmmaker takes his unauthorized adaptation of Dracula on a location shoot in Czechoslovakia. The cast and crew quickly realize that the unnatural behavior of the reclusive actor playing the Count goes far beyond method acting.
Yes, this is a really great simplistic storyline that the director of the film makes a deal with a real vampire to star as a vampire, but doesn't tell anybody.
Yeah, he tells everyone that he's a method actor and he's going to stay in character and in makeup the entire time. Everyone will address him as Count Orlok, and he'll never break character.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're talking about the method acting, and it's like that's still a relatively new concept in this time period that they're in. They're like, oh, he's studied with, God, what's his name? It's a Russian guy. I can't think of the guy's name, but the guy who pioneered that school of acting is still a living person. It's not like something from ancient history. It's a guy that exists right now.
Yeah, this is a metafiction tale. As I was reading up on this movie, this falls into kind of a metafiction kind of niche subgenre, but I really love this, and I like sometimes I like a hat on a hat.
Stanislavski is the guy.
Stanislavski.
Yeah.
Sometimes this sort of thing can be really shark jumpy, like when it's just it's too extra, it's too like winking at the camera.
Yeah.
But it like in some cases, I think like Deadpool movies get a little bit beyond, but this does not. It stays pretty true.
And I think there's a few reasons why that works. I think because it's a movie that's like 100 years old, you can take great liberties. No one knows what these people look like really, other than the people that were on camera.
Yeah.
Or what their personalities are like. No one really comes in with a lot of preconceived notions. And on top of it, being that it was a German production, even less was known in America about it.
Yeah, they probably didn't write a lot of things down in English.
So at the time when this movie came out, I was not aware of any pictures of Max Schreck out of makeup.
Yeah.
Now you go on the internet and you put in Max Schreck and you can find pictures of him like he's a real guy.
Like in his service uniform.
Yeah, but it was at the, younger cultists, millennials and younger might not realize this, but there was a long period of time when all the information we had about monster movies came from monster magazines. The information was not always correct, and urban myths were sort of perpetuated. Like,
someone would conjecture something and then say it like it's true, and then people would just sort of pass that off.
Because I absolutely believed for the longest time that no one knew who Max Schreck was, what he looked like outside of makeup, any of his biography. I totally believed that for most of my life, and then looking it up more recently, I'm like, oh, it's just because there was nothing available in English, and now everything's available to everyone, and we can find out all about him. But at the time when this movie is made, it's still kind of a mysterious movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of they're exploring a topic that like in the making of this Shadow of the Vampire. They're exploring something that has a lot of urban legend around it.
Yeah. And playing with that, because no one knows who this Max Schreck guy is. So what if he was a real vampire?
And I'm all for it. It's really amusing on the surface, but then the performance kind of takes you into it more. I mean, the other thing it's funny that you bring that ambiguity up, because that's in my notes. Like, they're working with a topic that was shrouded in a lot of mystery, and also there are things in the movie that they intentionally don't like enumerate. They don't talk about how really he met Count Orlok, or they don't go into that. They leave it kind of nebulous, like what's going on with Count Orlok. Because when this moving the production out of Berlin and going to Czechoslovakia is fairly controversial with their, cosmopolitan, Weimar Republic era Berliners, who are enjoying that pre-fascist freedom that was that era in Berlin, where it's this time of like, it's our Roaring 20s. It's their version of that. Like it's very hedonistic and like anything goes period of time. No, absolutely, and it's really fun. I like when they go to the Czech set, it's just like when Hutter is going to find Orlok. It's like it's meta, them doing the first beat of the movie.
Yeah, they do it, all of those beats, and I guess we're already in this, right? We're in our storytelling and
moment,
directing segment. It is all the major segments, because you start in Germany, and then you have the journey east, where you arrive at the inn. They mirror that. You have the introduction of the Count, and the Count preying on the young man. That happens. Then they have to travel to another location. That happens. And then ultimately the Count dies, seduced by this girl, and gets killed by the sunlight. It hits all the same beats as the traditional Nosferatu story, but with this layer of artifice on top of it. Yeah,
like the out of character characters hit the beats as well as the in character characters.
They're living through the movie that they're filming.
Yeah.
It is like this sort of meta storytelling is much more common now. It seemed quite like revolutionary in 2000.
Yeah, it seemed really, really cool. Like how did they like make this work so perfectly? But they're just talented and skilled writers.
So we already said the director is Elias Merhige. He'd only done one film before this, and it was like a silent art film.
Okay.
And so clearly he is a huge enthusiast of silent movies.
Yeah.
And that comes through big time in this, like his enthusiasm for the form. He's very talented at it. Like he really has a grasp of that era's style of filmmaking.
I love the filming of the silent scenes where you have Malkovich as Murnau, just sort of like giving them like live, like lots of active direction because it's silent.
Yeah,
he just say whatever he wants.
That had to be such a big change when you moved over to like synchronized sound and live recording of sound. The directors couldn't be giving live direction while they're filming, where of course in a silent movie, you could do that. And he's very heavy-handed, like telling
take the knife and put it on your palm and now press into it.
He's telling the girl like what she's thinking while she's playing with the cat and everything. And these are old hand crank cameras. I did bump up a little bit against the rhythm of their cranking. I feel like it needs to be much smoother than anyone is doing in this movie. Otherwise, the film is going to be lurching. You have to
be really smooth.
Yeah, it's a lost art form, that hand cranking a camera.
Robots took the jobs.
They always do. It's the AI is coming to get us. And the screenwriter was Stephen Katz, and he doesn't have a whole ton of credits either. It's just a lot of sort of art movie people that have done, less than half a dozen films each.
And I think that in 2000, the idea of doing a meta movie a meta movie about Nosferatu probably was considered an art movie thing. It was not considered a mainstream idea.
Oh yeah, I think without the enthusiasm of Nicolas Cage, I don't think this movie gets made at all. And
I'm surprised he didn't insert himself.
He was supposed to play Max Schreck.
Okay.
And then he stepped aside for Willem Dafoe, and I think that ends up being the right choice. And we get a very interesting Nick Cage Dracula some years later.
Oh, yeah.
So
Renfield.
He got his shot at playing the Count eventually. So I think that was the right move. And that's a good producer move to be like, no, he'd be better. And
true.
Not be like, no, I'm paying for this so that I can be in it.
This is really a vanity project.
Yeah. this is your little project, but this is my little Make-A-Wish too.
Exactly.
I'm paying myself to be in this movie.
Yeah, I like how this kind of this in sort of the writing and themes, they really kind of explore the idea of obsession in this movie.
Yes.
Murnau is just absolutely obsessed with this idea, so much so that he gets a real vampire, and then of course Orlok himself, being a vampire, is absolutely obsessed with the girl and with blood and all these things. It's really interesting.
Yeah, he's a very interesting vampire. I think it's because the Nosferatu version of Dracula never becomes handsome. The sort of incel patheticness of the character always stays visible. Like with Gary Oldman, because he turns sexy kind of halfway through the movie, you kind of forget how creepy it is.
Yeah.
Whereas if he always looks like a ghoul, you retain that sense of creepiness the whole time.
Yeah, I do like a handsome Dracula, but there's something special about the hideous Dracula or
ugly
Orlok.
Vampire.
Yeah. It's just there's just something really fun about that, because they really are a predator that other people aren't into.
And he's people are repelled by him. And he's sad and tragic, and he's been a vampire so long he doesn't even really remember how any of this stuff has happened. I find that to be a really interesting detail.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. It reminds me of how these guys are talking to him, and he talks about what's sad, in
the book Dracula.
Yeah, and it's just really well done.
Yeah, and he says that because I said, how did you become a vampire? And he said it was a woman, and then she left after she turned him and then left, and he was obsessed with her for centuries or whatever, and then he's just, over the years, he's just lost sight of everything. He doesn't even remember what she looked like anymore, and just like he lives in that ruin of a castle, it's just, he's been a vampire so long that he's just lost the will to live, basically.
Yeah, he's basically kind of a pathetic wretch, and he realizes it.
Yeah, which is reflected in both the previous versions of Nosferatu too. That's inherent in the stories. This is a vampire well past his peak era.
Yeah, and it feels really good when you're watching the story how the various players that have played Orlok, they capture that sort of enthusiasm, how like, oh, everything's going to be good again if I move, if I go and I pursue it. There's a lady there, like that renewed fire, like the old drive.
It comes back.
Yeah, so he kind of like lights up again, and that was really good writing. It was really good. It was really good kind of commentary on the story itself, and they reflected it in the meta character of Orlok, not just the movie character.
Yeah. So do you think that is the vampire's true name, is Count Orlok? Do you think?
I don't know.
Because when they say that, you'll always address him as this, and he'll always be in character, but everyone just calls him Max.
Max, yeah.
But Max Schreck is a German name, whereas Count Orlok is a generically Eastern European name. It doesn't. I don't know that it has a real etymology to it, but or does he not even know? Like, because I guess that is something that Murnau, Malkovich's character, says, that when he meets him, he finds him in that ruin there, and he doesn't know how anything is happening. Like he's lost so much to time
Yeah, he's basically just withered away. He's nearly done for. I don't know if Orlok is his real name, or if, I mean, obviously that's just the name that Murnau made up for his movie. Yeah. To copy Dracula.
Yeah, and it is interesting, like the meta story of he wants to adapt this book, but he can't get the rights, but he's going ahead with it anyway. Yeah. And he goes location scouting and encounters a real vampire there. That's a whole interesting backstory, because it almost sort of implies that Stoker knew about this guy and that he was the inspiration for the novel on some level.
Yeah, like, that's an interesting kind of weird meta commentary, if that is even possible.
Yeah, it's a good writing. I guess that's what I'm getting at. It's well crafted. It leaves you with questions, more questions than answers, in an intriguing way, not in a sort of frustrating way. It leaves you with stuff to chew on. Yeah,
it makes you wanting more, or leaves you wanting more, and makes you think about it. Think about what happened before and what's going to happen after.
Yeah, I didn't realize, when I'm watching this, because I always talk about, as we've covered several Dracula movies, this thing that Dracula does where he pretends to have servants for the sake of Harker, and I guess that observation comes from this movie, because when Max Schreck says that, he's like, that was the thing that he found saddest about the novel. I was like, oh, that's not my original observation at all. I think I took it from this movie and then have paid attention to it every time when I've watched it.
So for me, I always noticed that, because just like I said in the last movie, or last episode about this same story, it's The Last Unicorn, because I've watched, when I was a kid, you know how you have like a few tapes that are like year tapes? We had The Last Unicorn and The Hobbit and then Flight of Dragons, those three movies.
Oh, those Rankin Bass.
And so I watched The Last Unicorn, and that was my sister's favorite of the three. And so, you got to trade off who gets to choose. So I saw that one as many times, more times than the other two. Yeah. And whenever I would see like a Nosferatu movie or Dracula movie, I would instantly think of, oh, he's pretending because he doesn't have servants, because he's a pathetic wretch now. He pretends to be fancy, but he's not fancy at all.
And that is Christopher Lee, one of the most iconic Draculas. That's Christopher Lee in The Last Unicorn.
Yeah, doing his thing.
Doing what he always does.
Man, The Last Unicorn is...
Sad old man in a castle.
There are so many good performances, Angela Lansbury in that movie.
I think of those three, though, The Hobbit is my...
Yeah, of those three, The Hobbit is my favorite, for sure. Yeah. I love that Rankin Bass movie.
Flight of Dragons, though, is pretty good, too.
Oh, yeah. that was the shit.
Those are pretty good. Should we move on to visual?
Yeah, I think so. Or we could just do a whole thing on Rankin Bass.
We could. I could go in on any of those. Even Return of the King, which is probably my least favorite.
Yeah, that one was not amazing. But Cultists, if you're interested in Last Unicorn, just scroll on this
way back,
like 100 episodes back, I think. Under a different name, we did an episode on that, and it's still a good episode.
I think that's our second episode of Deep Dive the Meta.
Yeah. I think we did Dune, and then we did Last Unicorn. Maybe it was one of the first few.
Yeah, definitely worth going back to. And lest you think I slander Return of the King, I do sing "Where There's a Whip, There's a Way" to myself all the times. That song is still that's a bop for sure.
That's a good movie. All right, so as far as visuals go, so cinematography was by Lou Bogue.
Yeah, that's how I'm thinking we say that.
Bog. I think it's Bogue. Yeah, super good. I really enjoyed how they simulated German expressionism while not fully being expressionists themselves.
Yeah, they filmed on Kodak Vision 800T film stock, which was vintage film stock at the time, and it's a high-speed specialty stock with a very coarse grain, so it gives you that real filmy film, definitely not digital
nowadays
analog look. Yeah,
you can just use a filter and get that whole deal.
No,
I'm just kidding.
You really can't. Like, you can get pretty close. You can get
You can fool the fools.
Yeah, you can. You're like, it'd be a pretty good Rob Zombie video, but it's not. It's not gonna. Yeah, it doesn't look like film. It gives the impression. It's like an Instagram filter.
I saw a meme recently about Rob Zombie. It said Rob Zombie is just undead Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, I saw that too. Oh man. Someday we need to dig into his movies because I don't like any of them.
I don't think I even saw them. I haven't seen them.
Yeah, I don't. I want to. I didn't even make it through the Munsters.
Nah.
And I can power through a lot. And
yeah, you'll watch trash. I shut shit off.
I got I don't know, 25 minutes into the Munsters, and Lisa and I looked at each other. I was like, we don't have to keep watching this.
Yeah,
we can stop. Which is it's utterly bizarre because I love the Munsters, and it's clear he does also. Sorry for this tangent.
It's okay. It's a monster podcast.
It is clear that he loves it, but he loves it to the point that he gets in his own way in making it, and it's just unwatchable. It is just terrible. You'd be better off watching one of the old TV movies for sure.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, no thank you.
Cinematography by Lou Bogue. Vintage film. Great choice. The movie looks incredible.
It does look incredible. And I really like how they're able to, just through what I guess you would call it like tricks, and they're able to capture kind of the expressionist vibes of early horror, and they really do play with shadows and distort imagery, just like Murnau did, but to a lesser extent. Like Murnau did it like cranked to 11, and they're at like 7 or 8, but it's much more watchable.
Yeah, and something I didn't realize that that sort of iris effect that silent movies have on them is a aesthetic choice, because when they start filming, they've got a full on 35 millimeter square.
Yeah,
and then he always says iris in, action, and it's like, that was a choice.
They wanted to frame it.
They wanted to frame it like you're looking through a porthole, and I just assume that's what old cameras were built like, or like they have a circular lens on them, so maybe they should.
I mean, that's an easy thing to conjecture to make.
And so I was just like, how strange that that's a choice. They iris in. I also think, and I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, I think there's some Herzog homage in this too. There's a shot when they're taking the train out to Czechoslovakia, and the camera is sort of down at a very low angle, like almost sitting on the ground, and sort of angled, and the train rolls by, and I was like, well, that feels very Herzog-y. Like it feels like his POV on things.
Yeah, I don't think you could do this movie and not watch the Herzog version. I think that it's just Nosferatu the Vampire. I was like drawing a shadow of the vampire. No,
Phantom der Nacht.
It's so good. It's way more watchable than the original, and it's very enjoyable. I think I don't know if it's like a hot take, but that's kind of the definitive Nosferatu in my mind.
Well, it was.
It was.
We'll see. We'll see. Eggers here pretty soon.
Eggers has a really good track record, and the reviews are coming in hot.
And it's all part of the soup, like the influence soup of this thing, the Murnau and Herzog. It all kind of becomes a palette that you're painting with.
Yeah, because if Herzog is homaging Murnau, and then Marriage is homaging both of them. Yeah. So it is what it is. It just becomes it becomes its own niche genre.
Yeah, just Nosferatu is a genre.
Yeah.
Or this, because we've talked in the past about the vampire role playing game, right?
Oh yeah.
So Nosferatu is a clan in Vampire. of hideous vampires.
Yeah, of ugly vampires.
Yeah. And there is sort of like, there's other movies with Nosferatu type vampires in them. Like,
or you watch Kindred the Embraced and the Nosferatu are in there.
Oh, on the TV show?
The TV show, yeah.
I don't think I watched any episodes.
You gotta circle back around.
Is that show worth going back to?
It's like going back and watching The Highlander. The show, not the movie, because the movie stands up.
Yeah. So better in memory.
Better in memory, but if you've never seen it...
How is their Nosferatu makeup? Is it decent? Or
it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's definitely fine.
I think of Fright Night. Is that a bald head rat fang vampire? There's a couple movies in the 80s.
Isn't there one in Buffy the Vampire Slayer? I know there's definitely a few in What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh, yeah.
Like in the New York crew?
Yeah. And then in the original New Zealand movie, they have they have a Nosferatu vamp in the basement.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The Baron is kind of that way before he gets restored, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an aesthetic. It is one of the
It has
themes.
now become a type of vampire.
Yeah.
It's like the ugly, rat-fanged, bald-headed, elf-eared vampire.
Yeah, vampire. Yeah, and you call it a Nosferatu.
Yeah.
Like that's what a Nosferatu is. So let's talk about the art direction by Chris Bradley, production design by Ashton Gorton, costume design by Carolyn de Vives. And then an Academy Award nominated hair and makeup by Anne Buchanan with prosthetics by Amber Sibley.
Those two who did the hair and makeup and prosthetics, they really did an amazing job because Defoe's physical transformation into Orlok it's so complete.
Yeah.
It's so good. You almost forget that that's Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
And you just see, because it's like almost like they added like kind of bulbousness to his head.
Yeah, because you can't take away from a head. You can only add to it.
And it's so good. Like, it's absolutely one of the highlights is how good Orlok looks. And I've kind of said that through all three of these movies because he is the iconic, he's the title character.
Yeah.
And so you really have to knock that one out of the park or you don't have a movie.
Yeah. And he's got all of Max Schreck's body language down. Especially in the scenes where they're recreating things.
Oh, yeah.
But also just in the way he moves. He has the Edward Scissorhands walk.
Yeah,
with
and he has
claws.
his like hands held weird, kind of out.
And so, I was actually very surprised when I saw how low the budget for this movie was, considering it's a period piece, which always makes things extra expensive.
Yeah.
And you have such an effective monster makeup in it that they got away with this movie for $8 million is kind of crazy in 2000. Like, it looks like costs.
That'd be like $90 million in 2024 money, right? No, it'd probably be like $15 million.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this movie looks like it cost twice as much as it did.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a lot of
Halloween style stuff going on with a spray painted spirit mask.
Well, I was going to say there's a lot of actors working at scale and not their normal rate.
I would highly doubt that Malkovich or Defoe made their full normal amount.
Yeah. Because if I take it for granted that everyone knows what this is, but like union scale, you have a wage you're entitled to because of like your seniority in the union. And you can't be paid less than that. But, if you're a big movie star, normally you get paid much more than your scale.
Yeah, exactly.
So Malkovich, could be doing them a huge favor and just be getting paid scale.
There's a lot of the side, like small, actors people who have like one line in a thing or just in scenes that make their living off working for scale and getting many credits in small movies and just doing it a lot.
Yeah, and you make a good living doing that.
Yeah.
I don't want to undersell it.
No, it's a good deal.
You can afford to live in Hollywood, which is a very expensive place to live, but you don't have a mansion in Malibu or whatever. You just live in a house. little bungalow. Yeah. So I think everyone is doing this for the love, for it to come in at that budgetary level.
Oh yeah.
And they lost to the Grinch, which fair play is an incredible makeup job. The Grinch and the Who's, both of them. But
I didn't really love that movie, though.
No, it's sort of the end of all I can tolerate with Jim Carrey. That's Jim Carrey's Jump the Shark for me, for sure.
That's like Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka.
Yeah, he's no Timothy Chalamet. That's my Willy Wonka.
Oh man, not even Gene Wilder.
No, okay, Gene Wilder is, but I like Timothy Chalamet.
Can we get a Chalamet Nosferatu?
You would waste him on an ugly vampire instead of a sexy vampire?
Would rather have them redo a Bram Stoker's Dracula style vampire movie.
We have him in an old man makeup at the beginning, and then
Crusader,
and
then sexy vampire.
We're getting all around. Yeah, he can do it. He's got that range. Yeah, I co-sign the Timothy Chalamet Dracula movie. I don't know.
So, which would you rather have, a Timothy Chalamet Dracula or a Henry Cavill Dracula? It would be a very different style, because kind of like Christopher Lee, Christopher Lee is large and imposing, and so is Bela Lugosi. He's a big dude.
Chalamet, and the reason is Henry Cavill is not good at romance stuff.
Okay,
he's not comfortable with it, and I think that comes
because he's British.
Yeah, he's a little too uptight, and Timothy Chalamet, he's French. He comes from a more romantic background, I think.
Yeah,
and Dracula should be romantic.
Okay. I was just thinking intensity though, Man of Steel has some moments in it. That's kind of a...
And he's not completely incapable of romance, but I'm more looking...
We'll see in the Highlander. We'll see.
Yeah. I was to say, I'm looking forward to him in Warhammer.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's the world that he's made for.
Yes. We could talk a lot about that, but we won't.
Yeah.
So the other thing that I just kind of wanted to call out on this is, I already mentioned it before, but they really do they put in a lot of effort in having extremely high contrast lighting in this movie. In the same scene on the same set, you will have absolute darkest dark, and you'll have a spotlight. It's really dramatic. It has a really good it has a really good vibe to it. It really reminds me of the original.
Yeah, it's got that, like you said, expressionist Gothic horror aesthetic. It's not as extremely lit as the Herzog one, where it's only a single candle, just the natural light. There is unnatural lighting in it, but probably they're recreating what they would do to light the silent movie. You know what I mean? The film in black and white. So there's more spotlights and things like that. But yeah, it's excellent cinematography, and it's just sort of crazy that this guy didn't shoot more movies.
Yeah, he should get back into it.
Yeah, get back in the game. This is your career isn't over. I want to see all these people making more movies.
For sure. So you want to talk about audio?
Yeah, let's move on into the audio.
I mean, we've got a lot of really good sound design here, where there are traditional sound effects, and then they also did post with some kind of computerized stuff. But generally speaking, a lot of it has that kind of organic vibe. It feels like it happened right then and there.
Yeah, you hear the sort of cavernous, or I don't know what you call, like the dank castle vibes.
You get that really good reverb, and you also have like the sound of the cameras that that feels like it was caught by a boom mic, not added in post.
And the supervising sound editor was Nigel Heath, and it is excellent sound design. It's weird to think about sound design being a part of something when you're talking about silent movies. But like you said, there is the constant sort of grind, or the sound of the camera being turned. There's the director's kind of whispering direction over the top of all of the sequences. There's all sorts of very interesting just background dialogue that you hear. Because they're in the early part of the movie, they're filming in like a soundstage in Berlin. And just people are just constantly talking. You hear just the cacophony, the sort of white noise of many people going about their work.
Yeah, and you don't actually hear it, but it's like the same thing as when you're like watching, like if you're at the theater watching live theater. There's like the stage whispering, the people on the side and whatnot. It has a very I don't know. It has a theater informed vibe to it, and I really like that.
Yeah, it feels very lived in and authentic to that environment. I remember you kind of catch people talking about the cat from the opening scene in Nosferatu, and he's like, "What did you give the cat?" And he's like, "Laudanum." And he was like, "Could you tell?" He's like, "It was a little pickled."
That's really good.
Oh my god, you give laudanum to a kitten, like you're lucky it survived.
Yeah, and I liked that they used kind of a minimalist score. They didn't just beat us over the head with music. I love that.
Dan Jones is the composer, the BBC Orchestra performing it. I've been listening to the album. I will be honest, it didn't ever grab me like the way like the Popol Vuh soundtrack for Herzog's movie did. But it is effective. It's I think Jones he's influenced by Danny Elfman. I would say it's Elfman-esque in times, but it also is very evocative of the time period. Like you have that kind of cabaret music influence in there, and it's a good score, but it's not something I'm going to go back to for whatever reason.
I like that there weren't extremely loud themes played all the time.
Yeah, it's very understated.
I prefer that for this kind of movie, because whenever the music kind of takes over and it feels big and epic, it takes me out of the creepy little element. Like, I don't feel like this is a movie about a pathetic, creepy little guy. It feels too big and soaring. I don't like that for this movie.
Interesting. Yeah, that's fair. And I don't remember, it wasn't like when I'm watching the movie I ever thought, I don't like this score. Like, sometimes when there's a score that just doesn't work, it rubs you wrong. And this one never did that. But, it just also never grabs me as like a piece of music that I'll listen to recreationally. No. But it's effective for the movie.
I'm not a soundtrack listener anyway.
Yeah, it worked. It does what it needs to do, for sure.
Really, the only soundtrack you need is Conan.
Basil Pordoris. Yeah, that's my dude. I like him a lot. Should we talk about the cast?
Sure. I think we've talked a lot about Willem Dafoe as Max Schreck, Count Orlok, because he's the star, even though he was the best supporting actor.
He's the supporting actor, but he's the supporting actor that steals the show.
Absolutely.
And yeah, who did he lose to? Let's tell us what you think about Willem Dafoe. I want to see who he lost to and see if I agree with it.
So the things that I noted about Dafoe's performance is that it goes from absolutely terrifying. He's able to channel a visceral kind of intensity when the vampiric nature is close to the surface, but he's also able to be very small and sometimes clueless and sometimes confused. And I love how he can take that same character and be all of these things. Like, Shrek didn't do things by halves. He was kind of all in on his emotional expression, or he was just still and silent and motionless. But when he felt something, he felt the hell out of it.
Oh yeah, he's so awkward. Especially when he first arrives.
Yes.
And he's not used to being around people, and he starts, like, you see how he gets his confidence sort of built up.
Yeah.
And he kind of immediately starts preying on the cinematographer.
Yeah.
And he drinks too much of the guy's blood, and the guy has to get taken away, basically, because he's not gonna make it.
And they have like a showdown.
Yeah,
him and Murnau.
Malkovich goes and confronts him, and like is gonna choke him out. And you see like Orlok get his mojo back. Like he has been living as a wretch, and then it's like he remembers, like, actually, you're an insect to me. I am a god.
Yeah.
And like you see him kind of sit up, like, you can't choke me. I don't even need to breathe. Like, and the way he acts that scene is so good. And just like all his little creepy stuff he does with it, like he pulls that bat out of the air, or the way he leers at Greta, like it's a great performance.
There's a lot of nuance to it.
Benicio del Toro won for Traffic. And I don't know that I've ever seen Traffic.
I've never seen Traffic.
Del Toro's incredible.
He's all right.
I'm sure that was deserved, but this was a good one. This was a good performance
for sure.
Next up, John Malkovich.
Yeah, as F.W. Murnau. This was a really fun portrayal of the director, because we don't know a ton about Murnau, how, like, his personality, but Malkovich is really, like, he's outgoing, he's chatty, he's really interesting. Like, this, it feels like there's a lot of improvised dialogue, because a lot of this feels very Malkovich.
Yeah, it does seem like his take on, like, a Berlin artist guy of the 1920s.
He's extremely eccentric.
Yeah.
I love that.
Maybe a little bit of a morphine addict. He's a visitor of the sex dungeons. Like, you get quite a bit. I don't know if any of this is based on anything, or if it's just.
It's definitely based.
It is based. They make Weimar Berlin seem very cool.
They really do.
Yeah, I always just think about, it's partially because we're going through a little bit of this ourselves now in our sort of rise of fascism, our redo of the original.
Oh, yeah, fascismo.
Yeah, we're doing this the 100-year anniversary of the 20s, and we're doing it all over.
Hell yeah.
And there's this, I just think about how Berlin was just such this culture hub, and they had no clue of what was marching towards them from the Bavarian region and the Nazi stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's just like they were so in such a time of, like, anything goes, and are heading into a time of extreme repression. And I just think, like, you'd have no clue. You would be like, we're only going forward from here on. Everything is tolerated, and
everything's like everything is so prosperous. Like, it does feel like echoes of the past. Like, I was watching, this is going to sound really nerdy, I was watching a YouTube video on investing, and they were talking about how well everything has been doing for a decade. So basically, even through COVID, everyone thought it would dip, and it dipped slightly, but shortly thereafter, when everyone figured out, oh yeah, the world isn't going to fall apart, it spiked again beyond, and it's continued, and it's like, oh shit, this feels like the past,
like a bubble that's about to burst.
Absolutely. It's like it can't be prosperous forever.
And that's a weird thing, because there's this disconnect, because and we're just briefly touch on politics for a second. We haven't been in an actual recession. There has been price gouging, and there's been some
absolutely.
There has been some reasons that prices, like eggs, are expensive because of avian flu, and they have to slaughter whole chicken houses basically once there's a single case of the avian flu. So that makes chicken and eggs expensive. That's not something that's affected by the president. It's not like that's
thanks, Obama.
Yeah, that's just a thing that happens. And there's this impression that we are in a recession, even though all the indicators would say things are doing great.
Yeah, it is. It's like a weird historical mirror, and I think they're able to capture that in this movie. And I think Malkovich really does a good job as an eccentric guy who kind of he knows no bounds.
Yes, he's unrestrained.
Yeah.
He is like, and I thought, that seems almost Herzog-y to me, like the way this guy will do anything to capture the shot, whatever it is, the truth of the moment. Like, because you get to the end where the vampire's killed like everyone around him, and his scheme to kill the vampire has failed, and he just keeps filming. Yeah, because he needs to capture all of this stuff. He wants to capture the vampire feeding and the vampire being killed by the sunlight. He's just driven to do it. And then he, like, when people finally get there, he has someone go and hold up the slate so he can end. Yeah, because he can't stop until there is a production assistant to hold up the card and give him the marker. Yeah, and it's like, it's maniacal. It's an insane performance.
Yeah, it's definitely got this kind of manic exit to the movie, and I really enjoyed that. Who'd you have next on your list?
I got Cary Elwes as Fritz Arno Wagner.
Yeah, I got that one too.
The cinematographer. The hotshot pilot comes in his Red Baron biplane. Yeah. I thought he was a little bit of meta casting, because he's one of the guys in Coppola's Dracula. Okay, and he sort of plays the same, in a weird way, the same role in the story in this movie,
and he's in like Princess Bride, right?
Yes, he's the Dread Pirate Roberts Wesley.
Yeah, I was like, this is Wesley. I'm pretty sure this is Wesley.
And this is sort of, I think this is a kind of a lower point in his. Not that he never really became a movie star. No, he's in a bunch of movies that people really like, but he's never been a huge guy.
He's a guy that you could maybe get an autograph at a convention for and pay money for it.
He's definitely a guy that charges a premium at Comic-Cons for signatures.
Yeah, because, he was Wesley, and
he's Robin Hood, Prince in Tights, or Men in Tights.
Yeah, he definitely is a guy you could pay $50 to get a picture and an autograph.
I bet it's more.
You think more than 50?
Yeah, for a picture and an autograph, I think you're getting, I bet you're up around $100 for Cary Elwes.
Oh, damn. I don't know if I'd pay that.
No, I would
not for Cary Elwes.
No, you do the sneaky selfie. It's very. You shouldn't do that.
I'm not broke. If I want the picture,
you stand in front of the table and you snap the selfie with the guy, and you get him glaring in the background.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. I'd pay it for Malkovich or maybe Defoe in Nosferatu makeup. I do that. I pay that a lot for that.
He seems game.
If you're like, hey, man, it's like my bucket list to have Count Orlok come to this party. What's it going to take?
Could you imagine if you're at a convention and you go up to John Malkovich for your photo op and you pull out a bald cap and ears and you're like, can I get you to put these on?
Oh, and little fingers that extend on like Halloween fingers.
I guess, yeah. Maybe if you come also in makeup, he might.
Will you twin with me and your hand in the kit?
He might play along. He seems very game.
Yeah, seems pretty cool.
Yeah, but okay, let's not get off. Cary Elwes as Wagner.
He was just kind of doing the Cary Elwes thing, and I thought it was good.
Yeah,
it wasn't amazeballs, but it was good.
He's dashing. He, we talked about when we did the first movie. Most of these guys are World War I veterans. Mm-hmm. He's the only one actually portraying that out of all of them.
Yeah.
All of these guys served, so it's none of them.
Most people in Europe were involved.
Were involved in that war, whether they liked it or not.
Yeah, one way or the other.
Yeah. And I love the idea that he still flies around in that plane.
Fuck yeah.
Like, I just kept it after the war. The army was gone and I kept the plane. And it serves the purpose of like transporting the vampire. We needed to have a way to get him to this island.
Yeah.
And the plane does that. It serves a story purpose.
Yeah.
It's a fun swashbuckly kind of character, and I think he's pretty good in it.
It added a fun element to this kind of dour movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he comes in when it's getting very grim and brings a little color into the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had Eddie Izzard as Gustav von Wangenheim.
Yeah, and I put parentheses Susie. She still goes professionally by Eddie Izzard, like for stand-up and stuff. But at the time when this movie came out, Eddie Izzard identified as a transvestite. Now she identifies as transgender.
Yeah, I was mostly, when I was thinking about this, talking about kind of that picture in time of this at this moment, and using that particular name.
Yeah.
So no slight if that's not right.
Yeah,
I don't know what the etiquette is.
Yeah, in this case, because she still uses the name professionally, I think it's definitely okay. It's only when they
don't say that name anymore.
Don't say the name. Yeah, excellent as
really fun. I think that sometimes like these movies are all grim all the time. This is a really fun performance.
Yeah, and Gustav von Wangenheim that plays Thomas Hutter.
Mm-hmm. It's weird having like 3 names for these people,
and it's a performance within a performance, right?
Yeah,
because Wangenheim is like, kind of sophisticated and
he's like a posh guy.
Yeah, whereas Hutter is like this sort of exuberant teen, like the way that the character is portrayed.
Like workman-like clerk sort of character.
Yeah, he's a real estate clerk.
Yeah,
right?
He's not even like a fancy agent, a broker.
Yeah. But he's just happy-go-lucky and bouncy, and it's so different from the Wangenheim character, and you see Izzard go in and out of both. Like when they're filming, it slips into Hutter and is like, oh, da 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 da, la di da, and then back to Wangenheim, who's a little like aloof and sassy.
Yeah, kind of like a little bit of an egotistical actor.
Yeah,
I would say a Hollywood type, but
he's very catty. Right, where he's like, I heard this. Like he's always the one that's sort of like dispensing the little rumors and stuff. And I just thought it was a really cool little nuanced performance. No one gets a ton of time in this movie besides Malkovich and Dafoe.
Yeah, they're really everywhere all the time. Everybody else is just sort of a bit character.
Yeah. Who do you have next?
I guess John Aidan Gillett as Heinrich Galeen,
the screenwriter. Yeah,
yeah.
Who's
he's like kind of the dour guy. Like he's kind of the no man.
Yeah, like we can't do this, and like this isn't in the script, and why are we going here, and all these things.
Yeah. He's kind of the naysayer.
Yeah, well, he's a 2-man show with Udo Kier as Albin Grau, the occultist and producer. They're generally together, and as they were the producers of Nosferatu, and you can like sense they feel like Murnau is getting one over on them somehow. You're like
he's taking their baby away.
Yeah, he's taking. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like they are losing control of their production to this filmmaker and to his star also. Udo Kier, an actual German. Most of these people are Brits or Americans doing German accents.
I thought that those two were pretty funny. I enjoyed them. Next on my list, I had Catherine McCormack as Greta Schroeder.
This is not a knock on her. I think the character is really underserved. Mm-hmm. Flat out objectified, honestly.
Oh, that's true.
And, I'll talk about this more in a little bit because it's something that doesn't work for me. It's really jumped out and kind of smacked me in the face because both the Nosferatu films are the woman saves the day with her pure heart sort of movies.
Yeah.
And she hardly has any dialogue in this movie.
And she's kind of a shitbird.
Yeah. And I think that she's a little snooty at the beginning of the movie and is a little bit of a good time gal and likes a little of the opioids. Is supposed to justify that she just gets totally sacrificed to the vampire at the end of the movie.
Murnau doesn't give a shit about her. You can tell.
And kind of no one does, not even her friends, because the cinematographer Wagner is her plug on the morphine and basically watches her get killed and films the whole thing and doesn't really protest at all. So I just feel like nothing against Catherine McCormack, but the character gets done dirty in a big bad way.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is kind of a canary in the coal mine when you're watching a Dracula movie.
Yeah,
how do they treat Mina
/ Lucy?
Yeah,
because they're interchangeable.
Yeah, how do they treat Mina Harker, Lucy, whatever, or who this, and that might be something that doesn't work, but this one was obviously intentional, that she was meant to be kind of a she wasn't liked. She was obviously hired to be a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah,
Murnau wanted that scene, that kill scene,
because the vampire is obsessed with her.
Absolutely, that's the reward. He trades her.
Yeah, he's like, that's when he sees the locket. She has a lovely throat scene where he says she has a lovely bosom. Where he's like, that's Greta Schroeder. Like he knows she's a movie star. This has even reached far Czechoslovakia. They know who Greta Schroeder is.
Yeah.
So Catherine McCormack deserved better is what I'll say about that. Those are the main ones.
There's some little tiny roles, but
I've got several more names here, but I couldn't pull them up as who I think they are in the movie.
Yeah, I don't have a mental picture of any of them, but we've kind of covered everybody.
Yeah.
So how about your personal highlight?
My personal highlight is the sequence where Murnau is away. He's going to get our second cinematographer because the first one has been fed on too much. And so the production is on hiatus while Murnau is away. And our writer and producer are sitting there and they're drinking schnapps and they're just sort of commiserating. And Shrek walks up. Defoe comes up to them and they're like, Max, the movie's on hiatus. You can take the makeup off. And they're talking to him and he comes and he joins them. And he drinks schnapps with them and they're just sort of questioning him about the movie and about Dracula. And that's when he gives where he talks about, they're like, what do you think of the book? And he's like, I think it was sad. And he talks about all of that. And, the movie, it gets he has this thoughtful sort of take on the tragedy of being a centuries-old vampire. And then all of a sudden, he snatches a bat out of the sky, rips its head off and drinks its blood in front of them, and stumbles off drunk, afterwards. and then goes and feeds on one of the production members. Like, you see him in the background while they're talking. He's killing a guy up on the ship set that they have built behind them. And one of the two guys, I forget which one, has already kind of come around to the idea that, no, I think he actually is a vampire.
Yeah.
And the other one is skeptical, and they're both convinced after the
for
scene.
sure.
And I know that this is all, I'm being a little convoluted talking about it because it's a long sequence, but that whole sequence is a story in and of itself, as the way these characters, the way the mood changes, like they're laughing together, and then it gets very somber, and then it's like really funny in like a black humor sort of way. And that move, like that's the sequence that's really stuck with me from this film. What about you? What's your highlight?
So normally I make it I usually will have a backup just in case we choose the same scene, but I didn't have a backup this time because this is the most important scene to me. It is Orlok's Tears in the Rain speech.
Yeah.
It's absolutely moving. I wrote it down. Dracula hasn't had servants in 400 years, and then a man comes to his ancestral home, and he must convince him that he is like the man. He has to feed him when he himself hasn't eaten food in centuries. He can't even remember how to buy bread, how to select cheese and wine, and then he remembers the rest of it. How to prepare a meal, how to make a bed. He remembers his first glory, his armies, his retainers, and what he is reduced to. The loneliest part of the book comes when the man accidentally sees Dracula setting his table. That's just the saddest moment in the whole movie. Yeah. It's an absolute moment of clarity for Orlok when he sees himself in Dracula, that he was a wretch and he pretends, and people see him for what he is, a pathetic piece of shit.
He was a warlord at some point, like
it really is the most poignant moment in the movie, and then it's followed by the amusing catching the bat and all of that,
which is so funny. Like the way he does it, the way he snatches it out of this, and like his body language, like that whole scene shifts gears like 3-4 times.
It's a brilliant performance by Dafoe, and he's one of the best Shreks, if not the best.
Yeah, one of the top 4 guys to play Count Orlok.
He's one of the very best Orloks, and a really excellent Dracula in general. Yeah. So I think that is the best scene in the movie. I like lots of scenes, especially like when he's capering around in caves and stuff. But that was a moment where I thought, oh my God, this is heavy.
That's acting. That's got him the nomination right there.
That did get him the nomination. Yeah. All right. So what worked for you?
Well, we've been going on at length about this. The cast, particularly Dafoe and Malkovich, give such powerhouse performances, and they're just allowed to run with it. Like,
absolutely,
it's an actor's movie, like where they really get to play in a big way, and everyone's going for it. And so that cast really works well for me. The recreations, the loving recreations of sequences from the original Nosferatu are so well executed, and the ones where they change things jump out at you in a big way because the ones that are faithful are so faithful.
Yeah, they're really good.
So they don't change anything without reason. Like nothing's changed because they weren't taking the time to do it. If they change something, it's intentional for the story that they're telling.
Yeah.
And so I think that is really effective. And then we've talked about this quite a bit. The way the plot beats of the movie mirror the plot beats of the original Nosferatu is so expertly done. Like, it is just such a fine-tuned, well-crafted film where everything's done on purpose.
Yeah.
And it all just falls into place beautifully. What about you? What worked for you?
There were a few really, really good scenes aside from that standout scene, but one that I noted that I really enjoyed was a John Malkovich moment when he's directing Hutter during the scene where he's in Orlok's castle and he's like slicing the bread or whatever, and he gets him to intentionally cut himself, knowing that Orlok will kind of jump at it. It's one of these setup moments where Murnau knows he's a vampire, so he sets him up to catch a natural vampire reaction on film.
What is he? He yells something so that he's startled and cuts himself.
Yeah, I can't remember, but it's really good, and Orlok jumps at the blood, and you can tell he looks really pleased. Like this is the business. I really enjoyed that. That kind of highlighted the really good performances for me. So the cast definitely, and I agree with you when it comes to the sets and the overall mood and tone and vibe they were able to achieve with the sets and the lighting. This movie was it felt old, but it wasn't, and it was very watchable, like it was new. So it never felt fake or out of place. It didn't feel like it was, putting on a front of a period piece. It felt like when they left Germany and they went to Czechoslovakia, it felt like they went back in time practically. It was really, really well done. So I think that those production decisions and those cinematography decisions, they really stuck with me and made me feel like this movie did a period piece without overdoing a period piece.
So because you mentioned that, there is this tendency sometimes when you're doing something period to make it as though the 1920s were on a different planet. With non-human people. They were with 2020 or 1920s people. Whereas, no, they like human beings are basically the same in whatever time period they're in. So it does that really well.
So what didn't work for you?
I alluded to this a little bit ago. I think it is fundamental to the story that the woman has agency at the end. I think that is just like, for something that's so faithful to the ideas of Nosferatu, to not get that part of it and not have her even in on what's going on. She's not even there at the production until they're shooting those scenes. They bring her in like a doped up lamb, basically, to get slaughtered to capture the scene. It feels like a betrayal of the source material in a movie that I feel has been like making love to the source material for the whole rest of the movie. So it just really felt jarring the way the film ends. And that's not just in her betrayal and being objectified, but the way it sort of lurches back and forth, where he's feeding on her. He goes around and he kills Wagner, and then he goes back to feeding on her. And like the movie feels directionless for a little bit there while they're figuring out kind of how to wrap it up. And it had been like, I was on the cusp of calling it a perfect movie up until this sort of herky-jerky ending.
Okay.
So it ultimately, I feel like it still gets the ball into the end zone, but it is not the glorious touchdown that I feel like they've been running for through the whole movie.
Okay.
I feel like it just gets real rough there at the end.
Gotcha.
So what about you? What didn't work for you?
I wasn't a fan of that ending part either. I felt like the movie was a really, really amazing homage to the original and to Nosferatu the Vampire. But at the end, they decided, it seemed like, because they're trying to be meta all the time.
Right.
It seemed like they said, they had a conversation that was like, well, in the other movies, Mina or whatever they're calling her, she was the one who kept him there and made and killed him.
Yeah.
But in our movie, she's not the star. She's a side character.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually have Murnau be the one.
Be the mastermind.
That keeps him there and kills him using her as a tool. And so then they sort of backwards extrapolated that in the meta conversation for the B plot, which is that he is a vampire and he's made a deal with Murnau.
Yeah.
So the deal that he's using to keep him there is that he gets to have the girl.
Right.
And so they sort of their meta above the plot.
Yeah.
And it
and we haven't talked about it. He has a scheme to lower this weight and raise a door and let the sunlight in while he's feeding. Mm-hmm. But Orlok hoodwinks him and breaks the chain so that he can't, when he pulls the lever, the door doesn't come up. Mm-hmm. So potentially maybe she would have survived this encounter, but they absolutely risk her life without telling her. Yeah,
so her role changes in the movie from hero to dupe.
Yeah.
And that was obviously intentional, and I don't know if it's terrible. It's not the decision I would have made. I liked it when they were making every character in this movie kind of a distilled, more pure version of the character. Like they were kind of exaggerating the elements of each character. I would have liked that better, but yeah, I would say the last 10 minutes of the film were my least favorite. Which is different because in the last two movies, the last 10-15 minutes were my favorite.
Yeah.
So that didn't work for me. There's not a lot else that didn't work. I really searched this movie, and I was thinking, just like you just said, is this a 5-star movie? Holy crap. It's so good. And then it got to the end and I was like, man, they fucked the ending. How'd they do that?
Yeah. And it's just disappointing, and I'm just much more conscious of this stuff than I was in 2000, right? Mm-hmm. I'm 25 years older. About this hits me harder than it did then, where I wasn't really thinking about these things. Then I wasn't thinking about feminism. I wasn't thinking about anything like that. Whereas I watch this now with my 40-something eyes, and I'm like, this feels bad. Like, this hurts my feelings.
So I agree.
It offends my sensibilities.
I agree with you in general, but I am okay if they make a storytelling decision that to where they take advantage of a person, and that is part of the story. But it just didn't land. It didn't feel like...
It doesn't feel earned.
It didn't... Yeah, it doesn't feel like, ooh, that was interesting, or that was neat, or that was cool. Yeah. Whereas in some movies where there's a turn and someone just gets hammered, you're like, whoa, that was cool. This didn't have that. It felt like, they doped this lady up and then just let her get murdered.
And filmed it.
Yeah, this is a snuff film.
It turns into a snuff movie.
It's a little off-putting compared to the rest of it. Yeah. I kind of expected a little more.
And I'm not, I'm not prudish. I don't have a problem with nudity in movies and things like that. But she has a nude scene where she's just writhing on the bed for no good reason except to film her naked. Yeah. It's just glaring when it's this is just bad.
I think we're spoiled because we've seen so many really good depictions of this character role.
Yeah.
So they all sort of go into the zeitgeist, and the there's going to be kind of a meta comparison.
Yeah.
And this is a really weak version.
But it's like you said, everyone sort of mirrors the character they're playing in a way, except for her.
Yeah. She is not a cunning hero that sets a trap for a vampire. Yeah. She's like a drugged up stooge.
Yeah, she's like the goat they feed the T-Rex in Jurassic Park. Nice. You know what I mean? It's you feel bad that she gets eaten, but there's no character there.
Yeah. So this is our final thoughts. I was thinking we were gonna have a 5-star Nosferatu, but despite that element, it was still very enjoyable and probably my favorite of the 3 that we've watched. I really did like Nosferatu the Vampire a lot. I'm giving it 4 stars.
I'm right there with you. It's a 4-star movie. They snatched 4 from the hands of 5.
Yes,
at the last minute. But yeah, this is still one of my favorite vampire movies.
I would recommend this to anyone, even if they're not like a Dracula nerd. If it's just like, oh, you interested in a vampire movie or a dark horror or with some dark humor, whatever, watch this movie. It's really good.
Yeah.
The performances are super on point.
Yeah. Oh, totally. I think it holds up really well for the most part, and I still love this movie, even with the bummer of an ending.
Yeah, and Defoe is
incredible,
absolutely excellent as Orlok. He belongs in the conversation when it comes to excellent depictions. Of Dracula. Because I guess Orlok and Dracula are the same. They're just different versions.
The courts determined that they were functionally the same character.
Yes. So I think he belongs in the conversation. So as far as what the various places rate it, 6.9 on IMDb, 82% on
low,
Rotten
6.9.
Tomatoes. I agree. 71 on Metacritic and 3.5 on Letterboxd. So a weak 4 or a strong 3. So we both liked it more than the general consensus, but only by a little.
I did sort of do a little scroll through Letterboxd and looked at people's reviews, and it seems like it gets 3s and 5s. You know what I mean? That's how you land that in-betweener average
I think
rating.
People who aren't into vampire movies shouldn't be rating vampire movies.
I don't think that's how this works. I think you get to, if you review movies, you get to review all genres. Yeah.
Nah.
Only for vampire. This is not a for vampire fans only.
That's true. This is a for everybody movie.
Yeah, I think this is just for cinephiles, period. You should watch this movie. Yes,
absolutely. All right, let's take a break and then we'll come back with The Vault of Darkness.
Before we delve into the Vault of Darkness, we ask that all initiates of the cult follow us on your favorite social media platforms at Nightshade Cult.
If you've enjoyed this content, help us grow the cult by sharing it with like-minded people and leave us a review wherever you listen.
Do you have any dark tidings before we reach into
just
the
a
vault?
couple quickies, nothing huge. There's a couple of new trailers out that I think the cultists should check out. There's Castlevania Season 2. That looks fun. And same with 28 Years Later. That seems cool. And also just a little piece of news dropped that Henry Cavill's 40K series is officially official. They went through the 1 year can we make this work exploratory phase, and they decided yes, and they signed the paperwork. If you're deep lore nerd like I am, all the online rumor verse has said that they're doing the Eisenhorn series, of which I've read all the books.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. It's about an inquisitor that investigates weird shit around the galaxy. It's perfect to introduce you to the setting.
I was wondering if you were going to bring this up, because I have been sort of following this and wondering if they could get the deal finalized by the cutoff, because I knew the cutoff was quickly approaching.
Yeah.
And there was still like haggling going on between Amazon and Games Workshop.
Yeah.
And so I've been like, is this another cursed Henry Cavill project?
Man, Games Workshop, it would be so dumb not to do it, because their star is rising. They're selling more than ever. Their stock is higher than ever.
But now
it needs to be cool.
But you also need to not give up control of your baby to Amazon. Amazon wants the world.
That's true. They want to own your IP.
Yeah. And so like I appreciate them going down to the wire, and I imagine Henry Cavill worked his ass off to get this done, because it's such a passion project.
Yeah, he's
for
a
him.
super fan.
Yeah. Yeah,
he posted an Instagram picture of him going to the original game shop and his old hometown where he grew up to buy and play Warhammer, sort of as like a celebration of making this happen.
Well, I'm not heavily invested in this world in any way, but I'm absolutely looking forward to this.
If you want to see something, if you're not a person who has ever been like a 40K person, you want to know like what's all this business about Space Marines or whatever.
Yeah.
Go to Prime Video. You probably have it, and there's a thing called Secret Level.
Yeah.
There's a series, I believe it's episode 5 or something like that. It's like a 20-minute Warhammer 40K. It's a whole lot of show, not a lot of tell at all.
Yeah.
And it's amazeballs. Like, it's 20 minutes well spent.
20 minutes of just Space Marines killing Tyranids, or what are they?
Killing Chaos Cultists and then fighting a Chaos Sorcerer Demon. It's really cool.
Okay.
It's super rad. It's 20 minutes well spent.
Is all of Secret Level out, or is it still coming out week to week or something?
I think there's like 8 episodes out or something.
Oh my gosh.
And they're all different properties. Like the first one is Dungeons and Dragons, and they're just all these cool...
The trailer looks awesome. Like the trailer for they show Dungeons and Dragons and a few other games
Secret Level is cool.
Okay. I definitely need to watch those.
Check out the 40K one if you're at all curious what is this weird, grim, dark sci-fi setting.
Yeah.
So, what are you pulling out of the vault?
This movie put me in mind of another movie celebrating the silent film era.
Oh.
So I'm pulling... This is a controversial movie. It was a box office disaster of a film because it is a very, very expensive film with a lot of movie stars in it, and it lost money hand over fist.
Nice.
And is extremely divisive among critics. Like, a lot of people just hate this movie, but I think it's brilliant. And that is Babylon from 2022 by Academy Award winning director Damien Chazelle.
I didn't see that one.
You would hate it. This is not a Dave movie. It's a 3-hour epic film about how cool movies are.
Oh, okay.
It's from the Wikipedia, an American epic historical black comedy drama. With this, it's got a great ensemble cast. It's got Brad Pitt, Margot Robbie, Diego Calva, and Gene Smart in it. It's 3 movies in one, essentially, because you have 3 kind of main plots. You have Brad Pitt as the actor, the movie star who's past his prime. His star is falling, and he no longer is bringing them in the way he used to. Margot Robbie as someone whose star is on the rise, but she can't quite make the jump from silent movies to talkies when the technology changes. And then you have Diego Calva as this character he's a young Mexican kid who wants to be in movies, like in the making of movies, not necessarily starring in movies, but like as a producer or director or whatever.
I'd like to be a producer.
Yeah, and they've got these parallel stories. It's a whole lot of movie. It's, like I said, it's 3 hours long, and it is like jam-packed, and there's huge battle sequences, and just like... There's a scene early on in the movie that involves an animal taking a dump. And
all right, I'm in.
You either, when it happens, you're either going to laugh and like you're going to lock in with this movie, or it's going to be the where you walk out of the theater moment of the movie for you.
What kind of animal is it?
I don't want to give it away because... It's obvious. It's an elephant.
Okay, I thought elephant in my head. I don't know why the elephant came to mind.
It is an elephant. I know this is a spoiler. I didn't know it was coming, but when the elephant shits on these people, it's incredible. It's.
Oh my God, you're selling this to me.
It is, and like Tobey Maguire is an absolutely maniacal, unhinged laudanum addict.
Okay,
and it is just such an amazing movie, but it's a bit of a mess. It's a bit all over the place.
Okay.
It's 3 stories at once. It probably would have made 3 seasons of television, but they made it into a movie instead. And Damien Chazelle, he went from winning the Academy Award for La La Land. This was his passion project. And he's writing a movie right now, and he's well aware. He's in director's jail.
He's in director jail.
He lost the studio so much money. He's never going to be given a budget like that again. Basically, he
needs to make a low budget winner.
He needs to work himself back up.
But he's an Academy Award winner.
Yeah, but when you do a $250 million bomb, like that sticks around. That sticks on the resume.
Yeah.
But I absolutely think this movie is worth watching. And it always comes up. Margot Robbie always brings it up in interviews where I think over time, this movie is going to become a cult classic. And somewhere 20 years in the future, people are going to be like, that movie wasn't huge? What are you talking about?
It's going to be like The Life of Brian.
the Monty Python movie. Do people talk about The Life of Brian?
I think it's a cult classic for sure.
Yeah, but is it a regarded as a must see? Like,
no.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what movie I would compare it to. What I think it will become, but I think this movie's appreciation will only raise in the future as we go on.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's a Dave movie, but I think some of the cultists would get something out of this.
Okay.
What about you? What are you pulling out of the vault?
All right. So I decided I would lean in on surreal weirdness and a little bit of vampire. There's some vampire.
I love you have such a deep catalog of vampire stuff that you can pull from.
So this one goes back all the way to 1995 when I was reading. I was reading comics. And I got I had Preacher in my box.
Oh.
And now that Netflix has licensed all those AMC shows, there's 4 seasons of Preacher on Netflix. There's 43 episodes, and it's all 4 seasons there. This is Preacher. It's really good. I don't know if you watched it.
I fell off. I liked the first season quite a bit.
The first season was excellent for sure. It gets weirder and more bizarre. I don't know if you read the comics or not.
I did, and I feel like it ventures off from the comics at some point.
But it gets in. So I'm almost done with season 3, and I'm getting into season 4, and it gets into the territory that the comics very much did with the kind of global religious Illuminati, trying to bring back the Messiah, and the 25th generation great grandson of Jesus Christ, and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, the ensemble cast of Jesse Custer, Tulip, and Cassidy the vampire. These 3 are just golden. I love the performances. I should have written down the actors' names.
Dominic Cooper is Jesse. Joseph Gilgun is Cassidy, and I'm looking up Tulip right now.
They are so damn good. This show, there was a moment where I was watching it. I think it was in season 2, early season 2.
Ruth Negga.
Okay.
Yeah. I love her too.
She's awesome. So somewhere in season 2, I'm like, this is fucking off. This is weird. And it was either I'm going to stop watching this or I'm going to double down. And I was like, you know what? I owe teenage Dave sticking this out because I've read all the comics. I've even thought about going and buying the omnibus editions. This is only 2 volumes. Might as well. It's only 66 issues.
Yeah. Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. Those are great comics.
It's all good. And so I decided to stick it out, and I'm glad I did because the performances of it all ratchets up on the gonzo level. So season 1, if you don't know Cultists about Preacher, Nick and I are talking about this because we both read the comics and all that. Jesse Custer is a hard drinking, chain smoking preacher who's having this crazy crisis of faith, and he's infused with divine power. He has the word of God, and things go weird where angels come down to earth and try to catch him, try to get him and get the word of God back. And then later God goes missing from heaven and he's trying to find God. And the church is trying to install a new Messiah and all these crazy things. And it is a sci fantasy. I don't know, weird fiction. I don't know. It's absolutely weird. It's modern urban fantasy with a vampire, a preacher with divine powers, and a lady who's just a total badass. Yeah. Like, that's the ensemble cast.
She's like a hitman.
Yeah, she's like a gun expert and an expert wheelman driver. Like, she's got all these skills of like a super badass action movie character, but she doesn't have magic powers. The other two do. Yeah. And she's still kind of the most badass one. Yeah. It's just that Jesse can take a beating and never die, and that's kind of what he does through most of it. He just gets his ass kicked. And yeah, it's awesome. So if you are looking for a series with, like 4 seasons, go to Netflix and give Preacher another chance, because you just have to put your mind in the mode of, okay, let's get weird. Yeah. And it gets weirder than you thought it would.
And I think part of why both it drifting away from the source material, but also part of the annoyance with it, I think, was the AMC app. Which was how I was watching it at the time, and like there was always something screwy, I feel like, with those channel specific apps.
Yeah, I hate those, and that's why I make it a personal rule. I will not subscribe to a service for one show. Yeah, that's just, I'll never do it. I'll just deprive myself of the show. Yeah. And so now the AMC has most of it's on Netflix at this point. I was right. I was right the whole time. Yeah. And so
it eventually you're like, I finally got Interview with the Vampire, and I got Preacher.
Hell yeah.
Slow and steady wins the race.
So yeah, and it's not like I didn't have stuff to watch in the meantime.
Oh yeah,
we got plenty of stuff.
An embarrassment of riches.
So yeah, go and watch Preacher. Cultists, you're gonna enjoy it if you like weird shit, and it has a vampire, so it's thematically. I almost went with another series that has a vampire side character in it that I searched my notes, but I have not done a full talking about Dresden Files. I can't believe that I haven't.
It's definitely come up.
It's come up, but it's never been featured on my vault. So, and I even looked in the old stuff, but I think that most of the cultists know that I'm a super fan
for Jim Butcher.
But I'm going to talk about that after I go and meet him in February.
Ooh, so that's exciting.
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
Oh yeah, okay.
I'm going to Denver. I'm playing in a Nordic LARP, which is like a ruleless, all role play thing, and I'm playing a canon character that's in the books, and I'm going to meet Jim Butcher, so it's going to be dope. I'll talk about it more in February. But yeah, if you are looking for a book series, that's a good one. Well, we'd like to thank you for joining the Nightshade Cult.
Until we meet again, we're wishing you unpleasant dreams.